Okay, our facilitator instructor for the Veg Club is Carol Appenzeller. And Carol thinks about growing food more than most people should. That's to our benefit because she has a lot of knowledge that she's going to share with us. She's been growing vegetables for 3 decades, half of that time spent on Bainbridge Island. She has the equivalent of 33 4-by-8-foot garden beds on her less than quarter-acre lot, which is an inspiration for every vegetable gardener west of the Cascades. Please welcome Carol Appenzeller.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thanks for taking care of everything technical ever having to do with this, and also the good cheer. It's very sweet. And thanks everybody for coming. I'm torn because I'm supposed to be looking at you, but then I'm looking over here at you. I'm glad you're here. Let's see what happens when I share my screen. If it actually works. That's looking the way I want it to. That first note is just in case someone didn't hear the announcement. And you can get a recording of the last month's class, which, John, are you going to post that? You're going to put that in the chat if you want to see last month's class, so you don't have to jot down this URL, which John already has, I assume. So we're going to talk about, what are we talking about? We're talking about succession planting, which we started last time, and lights, and protecting your plants all year round, and repelling slugs. But first, I have a couple of announcements, because last time we were talking about opportunities to grow with other people who might know stuff that you would want to know. And one of the opportunities is Peaceful Morning Farm. John Chang, middle of the island here. Let's go there. There it is. The buildings aren't his because those are Brian McWhorter's buildings, but this is the Morales Farm, and a lot of it is John Chang's Peaceful Morning Farm. He grows 90% of the veg he grows goes to food banks. 10% goes as little thank you gifts to people who help him. So you could go work with him. I talked to him. He's very into this. He has people volunteer all the time. You can volunteer with him and pick his brain while you're planting lettuces. And the other one is the Farmers and Gardeners Guild. So look, they have chickens, they have, what else? They have ducks, they're thinking of milking goats, and they would like people to join who have all kinds of skills. It says all skills appreciated, not just gardening knowledge. So that's the Farmers and Gardeners Guild. Both these links and all this information will be in the resource page. And John is also scrambling to put it in the chat, but you don't have to copy it out of the chat if you're feeling stressed about it, because it's on the resource page that you're going to get at the end. I've talked to Heidi a few times. I've never been to this Farmers and Gardeners Guild, but you can call her and ask her about it. Okay. So by the end of our meeting, I think you're going to be able to do all of these things. I think you're going to overlap crops, set up simple lights if you want to this year or next. But this is just to build your knowledge as a gardener, not, to tell you have to do it this year. But you're going to keep accumulating knowledge, and someday you might say, that's a good idea, I'm going to do it. You're going to reduce plant stress when you move starts outside and build simple movable row covers that I use every season, and also fight slugs. So first I'm going to do a little tiny review of what we did last time, which is planting in succession. So you can see the different parts of the growing season in this picture, and one plant starts bolting, but you're ready because you're either going to put seed in before that plant is done, before it's ripe. You're going to slightly overlap. If you put seed in, that's convenient, but it can be too cold, too hot, too slug ridden, too wet, something like that. So you might want to start those ahead of time. And if you do, you end up overlapping your planting by 2 to 3 weeks with like these guys. So those are like 2-week-old lettuces, and they're going to go out tomorrow. So if you did this just 3 times for 3 crops, not even like all your crops in all your beds 4 times, that's and you did it, you overlapped by 3 weeks. That's 9 weeks of like plant weeks, right? Plant growth. So that's pretty cool. And you can start them even during the warm season. You don't have to only start them when it's cold, too cold out. So we talked last time about same crop sowings where you plant, if you say I need 3 lettuces a week, so every other week I'm going to plant 6, or every month I'm planting 12 because I can't be bothered every other week, something like that. So it's good for lettuce and cilantro and lots of quick growth things. And then different crops in a sequence. That's pretty much the previous page we just saw. And then different maturity crops. So that's when I have a giant pumpkin that I love to grow, the sweetmeat pumpkins. They're a squash basically, but they need a 4-by-4-foot root space eventually, but not when they're tiny. So I have lettuce starts ready to go, and I put the lettuce starts all around. By the time the pumpkin takes over, the lettuce is mature and it's enjoying the shade from the pumpkin. So pretty good. So those are all kinds of succession that we talked about last time. If you want some more details, well, here are some more details. What can you sow directly in the garden? Or what do we sow directly in the garden instead of in cells? So here we go. Directly in the ground, these are very rootsy things. See these? They want to put their roots straight down, so we don't put them in cells because it kind of messes them up. Oh, cells are these little pots. I call cells anything that you're growing in. So these are like classically what cells are. You know, you get them from the nursery, but I would say any little pot I'm going to call a cell. So we don't do those. Put those right in the ground. Don't worry about it. These second group are a little easier in the ground, but everybody you talk to will have a different take on this. Some people always start their peas in cells. I have started corn, and I always start my cukes in cells. And I think beets are really easy in cells, but you know, people are sort of divided about that. So if you have any specific questions about that, I like to get ahead of the warm season by starting cukes in cells. And these, if you just are starting out, this third category, these are really happy in cells. See, they're really leafy. What you want to be aware of is it you're going to start them in cells outside, are the temperatures right for them? So you want to look on the packet, or you want to go to your favorite seed source and look up when, you know, what's the germination temperature for lettuce? When does it like to grow? Because, for example, basil is on here, and basil doesn't want to grow outside, like on your patio in cells, until it's quite warm. And then this next category is great for in cells. In fact, we have to grow them that way here because they need a super long warm season, but we don't have it. So we have to fake it for the first several weeks of their lives. Like lettuce takes 2 weeks to grow in cells probably, but a tomato takes forever, and you keep potting them up into bigger and bigger pots. So if you want to go for a particular variety of tomato or pepper that you really love from your childhood or something, that's a good way to go. But you don't have to. It's perfectly respectable to go buy starts from the nursery or something. This last category needs cool temperatures. So they start in the house really well. They love the 68 degrees to germinate, but then they want to get cooled off to 60, 65 degrees pretty quick. So I don't have those in my house temps right now, but you can start them outside later when things warm up a little bit. But you could also do them, if you're going to try to do them now, you could do them if you have lights, if you want to get lights, you can start them at 68 and then put them in that cold room that you have, the garage or whatever, depending on your temps. So let's see, what do we grow them in? Well, on the far right, there are the cells, but you can put them in lots of containers that you don't have to make more plastic, right? I'm going to just recommend you not do that and crowd them in like that, just for now, if you're new to this, because you have to get these out of there speedy quick and put them into little cups by themselves anyway. But this one on the top left, I would like to advocate. You can put them in the cups. You can put them in individual egg carton cells, cut off juice bottles. This one I'll explain a little bit. This person is going to thin it to 4 plants, 1 in each quadrant. And then before they plant them out, like maybe a week before they plant them out, they're going to cut with a knife between them in the soil, between them like that way and that way. So that you then have these 4 separated plants. It seems cruel, but it's kinder than like trying to pull them out and rip them. And do you see that there, one thing I disagree with that picture is, do you see how little soil there is in that container? That's kind of a waste of container, right? So soil, when you put your seeding mix in, any mix, you know, it compacts down as you water it as like time goes by. So you might want to put it in and press it down a little bit and water it and then think, could I fit a little bit more in there? You want a little rim to hold water, right? But you don't want like that much. And we're looking at seedling mix that is sterile. People do mix their own seedling mix. I do. My neighbor does. But if you're starting out, you want to get yourself some sterile seed mix, because then it doesn't have anything that will rot those babies that you're trying to grow. And so plants that don't need a long warm season, like not tomatoes, can be planted out throughout the spring and summer, as long as you can check on the germination temperatures to make sure that they're going to be happy. Like I wouldn't plant basil in April because basil likes it to be like 80. So how can you find out what germination temps are and what a plant needs? You can go to, for example, Johnny's. So we're looking at this spinach seed and we go down here and this shows temperatures. And this shows how successful it will be at germinating. So you can see that spinach actually doesn't mind germinating at super cold temps, but it takes a really long time. And then you get to about 68 and it starts to tank. It doesn't want to be above 68. So has anybody tried growing spinach in August because you decided to have fall spinach? I'm not seeing anybody. Well, you'll plant 100 plants and like 40 of them come up maybe, because it hates the heat. It doesn't want to germinate. It has a genetic adaptation not to germinate in the heat. So this happens to be Johnny's, so it's handy, and they have like growing information, things like that. So that is one of the places you can look up. You can look these things up. You can cover them up with a cloche like this, which in this case, a cloche to me is anything that you're protecting plants with. But this is a drawer, I hope, from a broken set of drawers. And they vented it by tipping it up. You can also poke holes in the sides, big holes. But I wouldn't put it on the ground like this because slugs. And these will keep it out of the wind and increase the temperatures a little bit. Oh, window light, sad news. Does anybody have starts that you've grown in the window and they were just great and they didn't get all skinny, like 8 inches of stem, 2 leaves, 8 inches of stem, 2 leaves? Remember the bean plant from kindergarten? Well, windows generally don't work, even if it's bright, because not everything passes through that window, and they often have coatings on them that don't make it not work. But you can grow them under lights and get a head start. Does anybody have any questions? I gotta look. I'm not looking. I don't see anything. Do you, John? You see questions?
Nothing yet.
If you have a question and you don't want to type it, you can just, I don't know, holler at us. Okay. All right. Oh, a few more tips. You can fill the cells a little bit and then sprinkle just a little sprinkle of whatever you're using, organic fertilizer, in your garden. So like Down to Earth is one brand. It's sold locally. There's also one called Dr. Earth, but I happen to use Down to Earth now. And sprinkle it on like you put salt on, or like heavy salt. Maybe it doesn't need much. If it's a really quick growing plant like lettuce, it's possible it doesn't even need it, but I'm telling you, in case you want to put a little bit of fertilizer in there, it's good insurance. If you do keep your starts in cells for many weeks, like you want to grow peppers, So you're keeping them, you're going to have to put fertilizer in there or fertilize them with, I'd start with like a quarter strength fertilizer, but you don't do it right away. You let them get like several sets of real leaves and keep an eye on them. If they seem to stop or turn slightly yellow or something, they stop growing, then you can always do that, because there isn't much nutrient in the sterile seed starting mix. And you know what cotyledons are? Cotyledons are the first leaves. They look different from the rest of the plant's leaves. They're called the seed leaves. They do yellow. They're meant to be temporary. So if you have plenty of other leaves growing, don't worry about the seed leaves withering or going yellow or falling off or whatever, because that's what they do. And you can seed your tomatoes and peppers if you're at that level. It's kind of not a thing if you're a very beginner, but if you're ready to do lights and tomatoes and things like that, then you can seed them about mid-March. And this is what potting up looks like if you have to pot up a transplant. You've taken it out. This is actually a little root bound, but they're putting it into a bigger pot with more seeding medium and a little bit of fertilizer maybe. So that's potting up. And when do we do that? So check this out. This is the just right picture. This plant has used all the soil for its roots. It's gone to the bottom of the pot, but it's not circling all the way around. The reason we want it to have used the soil is that if you take it out when it's like this, there are no roots here and there are hardly any roots here. And when you go to turn it over and put it in a pot or put it in the ground in your garden, that soil is going to fall off. And then the roots are like, don't know where to go. It's not very stable for the roots. Also, it's a little bit of a waste of this soil because the roots never got there to use it. So the just right, the Goldilocks picture's in the middle. You could even have more roots on this side here. And then root bound is on the right side. That's too much. That wanted to get out a couple of weeks prior to this picture. So do you have any questions or contradictions? Like, I always let my plants get root bound. It's the very best thing to do. Okay. I really felt like it was a monologue last time. It was a monologue last time. So any more interaction that I can get, I'm glad to hear it. Because I'm a classroom teacher, and Zoom is funny because it's just one person talking. Okay, so I have these interspersed just to see if anybody will talk to me. Oh,
Got 3 questions in chat.
I see it already. Okay, I'm going. Jerry says, when do you recommend starting green beans? The soil needs to be warm, so it depends on your garden. But I would do it in late May, early June, maybe. And I might, if I were really eager, take a piece of discarded plastic and put it over my bed that I'm going to put my green beans in. So I might like amend that bed and do everything and get it ready and then put that plastic over, kind of warm it up. But you know, we have from the previous class and in the resource page that you're going to get at the end, I have one particular planting calendar that I really like. It's called West Side Gardener, and he will say plant now, plant now, plant now. So I think that will help you out. Root bound starts. Well, it kind of depends on the start. So Peter asks, what are my recommendations for root bound starts? I would try to gently tease the roots out. You just need to get the tips of the roots coming out from the root ball. Some people will tear the root ball because that stimulates growth of more roots. If it's really pot bound, like really tight, I will sometimes do that, or I'll score the outside of the root ball. I've seen research that says it doesn't really help to do that very much. It doesn't make the plant grow any faster, but it does make the plant not just continue to circle, or continue in that root bound spot in state. So my recommendations, Peter, did that do it, or do you have something else to ask about that? Try to disturb the roots a little bit. But if you can avoid them, if you can, okay, if you can actually, you can do this at the store. Take the plant that you're curious about, look at the bottom, if roots are coming out the bottom, maybe you want to put your fingers around the plant. So there's the plant, go like that, turn the pot upside down, take the pot off and look. And things like cucumbers do not want to be pot bound at all because they have brittle roots. But I would probably I might buy a root bound lettuces and just disturb the roots and try to see if they'll recover. They often do. Let's see, when I buy starts and nurseries, the plants are often not root bound when I plant them. No, they shouldn't. Maybe I wasn't clear about that. This, so Jill asks, should I wait until they're root bound? Jill, this would be ideal right here. So this is not root bound. The one on the right is root bound, and that's a bit late. But this is great. This is ideal. This one, yeah, they do sometimes take teeny tiny starts and put them in a bigger pot and then up the price. That's a little cynical, but sometimes, but I suppose what they're doing is saving the plants and then allowing them to grow into the bigger pot. I think in that case, because they've probably been potted up, if you lost soil, it wouldn't hurt the root ball because there is probably inside of that a root ball that is stable from, it's like a tiny root ball. So if it's working for you, that's fine. It's just, this is a little bit hard to work with and unstable because you can get it in the ground, but it's gonna kind of fall apart, right? So does that mean I should leave them? Oh, yep, okay. I think we're good. Let me know, John, if any more of them show up. Thank you, question people. Okay, let's look at lights because we're educating you. You could get lights right now. You can, of course, start crops earlier and growing your own tomatoes, but we also use them to grow basil and cilantro all winter. So you know how you get the bunch and then half of it rots in the fridge? You can have basil and cilantro in little bits at a time. These are baby basils. These are not the winter basils, but teeny tiny basils right there from under the lights. Yeah, so, okay, so we'll have some tips on lights. There's a lot of stuff on lights. Shop lights are great. So from the hardware store, Craigslist, a garage sale, the picture on the right was free stuff from a few weeks ago on Craigslist in Kitsap County. There are tons of them in Seattle and they show up here and they should have 2 tubes. So see, they each have 2 tubes and then they have a white reflector. I have some that don't have a reflector and they work fine, but it's better if they do. And the reason we want 2 tubes is we want tubes above all the leaves. So I don't want to have these guys growing and then 1 tube that's down the middle, because we need a lot of light on these guys. These guys need lights right above them. So I even like 2 lights with 2 tubes each. Okay, so it says 1 warm and 1 cool tube. So that's like a pinkish glow and a bluish glow, a blue-white light. And a lot of places will say you should get 1 warm and 1 cool tube. But what if you get them already filled, like you get them for free on Craigslist or you buy them that way? It still works. Those work really well, I have found. Broad spectrum shop light tubes, as long as they are broad spectrum, just like they're not special plant light full spectrum, they're just broad spectrum. You can use either broad spectrum or you can use 1 warm, 1 cool. So here's my defense of the broad spectrum bulbs. I got some from the thrift store and I used the tubes that were already in there for 10 years and the plants grew great. And then they conked up. So I got 1 warm and 1 cool and the plants are exactly the same. So then I thought, well, that's just me. We need more data. Well, Carol Deppy, who grows, she's a plant breeder for the Northwest. She wrote in one of her books, I grow all my starts under 2 lights that I bought at the thrift store, and I'm using the original tubes. So it's exactly what I do. And then Kansas State, I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of Aggies, but Kansas State University said, you don't need the warm and cool. So if you were buying them new, I'd probably go warm and cool because I don't want to like mess you up. But if they're already in there, you might just try growing the plants under and see how it goes. So those are some tips and more tips. Okay, for fluorescence, you're going to see people say, keep the lights 3 to 5 inches away from the plant. Nope. There isn't that much light coming out of fluorescence. It's not the sun. So we want it 1 inch to less than an inch above the plants. So that means if the plants are this big, the lights are like right there. And oh yeah, they'll say adjust for plant height. So the second thing here. So you want to have the lights on pulleys and they go up and down. Well, it's really good to have them adjustable height-wise. But what do you do when you have a 6-inch plant and a 1-inch plant? You move the plants. So especially for home growers, we don't have 300 tomato plants. We have like the big tomato plants and the teeny tiny basils that just got started. So in the picture on the right, you can see that this is actually on a shelf, but this wood is an off-cut chunk of wood. On the far right, it's propped up on a turned over like takeout container or something. And then there are some books that I don't really like. So these are my starts. And as they get bigger, I pull out Chemistry for Dummies. And when I want to do something else, you know, when these get bigger, I pull out the takeout container. And so all kinds of things. Sometimes I'll take a baking pan from the kitchen and shove it under because I don't really want to use things for one thing. I want to use what I have. And then another thing is we have to keep the lights on for longer because plants need a certain number of photons. They need their photons bucket filled up. And because nothing is as strong as the sun, we have to leave the lights on for longer in order to fill that bucket up. And yeah, you want to keep fluorescent tubes up out of the kids' reach because they do require special disposal, right? They've got some mercury in them. So you don't want them smashing anything. I'm going to show you why you want the light close. Drop some science on you. So here's light. This is a point source light, but it works with tubes too. If you really think about it, I could explain. So my plant's going to be 1 inch away, and the light coming out spreads and it covers that area. But then you say, no, I'm going to put mine at 2 inches away. And you'd think it doesn't look different to me, right? It looks like the same brightness when I hold my hand up there. But it's called the inverse square law. If you move it twice as far, it's 1/4 the intensity because that same amount of light is spread over 4 square inches. And then 3, it goes to spread over 9 inches. So it's a lot less bright. And I do see questions. I'm going to answer at the end of this. You can get LEDs also. They come 2 ways. So on the right, you see a pinkish glow. That's a red blue light because plants, you'd think plants use green light because they're green, right? But the reason you see them as green is they're not using the green light. It's bouncing off and hitting your eyes. But what they suck in and use to build sugar is red and blue light. And the white one is fine. That is actually a plant light also. So both of those are specific LEDs for plants, but the broad spectrum one, the white one, has all the colors. So it's got red and blue. And of course, the red blue light people who make the purpley glow lights that you see there say that they're more efficient because they're using all their energy to make what the plants want. But the ag reports say that they both work. And you can even get them as tubes. You have to read, but there are some that are tube shaped and they can go in actual fluorescent lights. So you have to check and make sure that they're the right size and the right wattage and stuff, wattage equivalency. Oh yeah, and with LEDs, you keep the plants further from the light and you're going to have to adjust it as needed. And I'm sorry, I can't tell you how many inches because LEDs, especially now, because it's kind of the Wild West and everybody's making new kinds of, plant lights and things because it's a fairly new technology. You kind of have to read the package and then do some experimentation. So if you decide 5 inches is your distance, and the plants go crisp, then you're going to move the plants, you're going to move the light away. And if they start to get leggy and skinny, then you're going to move the light closer. So leggy is, yeah, long stem and then in between the leaves. And there are 3 links on the resources page, I think, under this. So it'll give you varying degrees of information about LED lights, depending on how far you want to dive in. Oh yeah, and the last thing on here says, do the reviews mention vegetable starts? And the reason I say this is a lot of LED talk is about growing marijuana. And is it the right wavelength for making them bud? But budding takes different wavelengths from just growing babies. So yeah. And you can pay so much money for special racks with lights on them. And often the lights are not even intense. They'll be like one tube over this massive shelf. And so the pictures do not show me that they're going to work very well. So you can have it in a bookcase under a shelf. So, you know, the picture on the lower right is my actual grow lights that are in a bookcase. So the lights are chained from cup hooks on one shelf, and then the plants are on the shelf below, and then there are books below that and family heirlooms above. So you can do it. Put it, you know, if you don't want in the living room, put it in the office. You can put it, of course, on your garage shelves or your workbench if you're growing brassicas for cool temperatures. Or you can make yourself a homemade light stand, both of which are shown on the right side. Far right is wood, like that, because that's just going to compost when you're done with it. The left side is PVC. You don't glue it together because it will stay together, and you can pull it apart when you want to store it. It does make plastic. PVC is fairly polluting when you make it. One thing I would do with this one is I would move these 2 light stands closer, because see how far apart these lights are? They're also way too high. I would want them to have 2 tubes and be close together, as close as I can get them, and down, have the plants lifted quite high so that they're really getting exposure. Okay. Let's see, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I think I'll check for these for questions. So do I need full spectrum bulbs? I don't think you need a special plant light, but you need, if you're going to use just an office light, and if it says full spectrum on it or broad spectrum, that's fine. Or you can do 1 pink, 1 blue. 1 warm, 1 cold. That says, let's see. Hi, Fran Corton. Fran bought spinach, lettuce, and peas. There were many separate roots in each cell. Gently pull them apart. Yeah, especially with spinach and lettuce, you can pull them apart. Yeah, if you're gentle, yeah, that's actually called pricking out. You can just use your fingers. When you do that, you want to grab the leaves, not the stems, because they can replace a leaf, but a plant can't replace the stem. And yeah, you can even use like a pencil to kind of pull them apart. I don't know if the peas will respond well to that, but I'm looking forward to you telling me, Fran, if the peas were okay with that. Sometimes their roots are kind of brittle and stuff, but yeah. Are fluorescent bulbs better than LED? Oh, LED produces more photosynthetically active radiation. So it's called a PAR rating. So are they better? The LEDs are more efficient, so they're less cost per hour to run, but you might not notice it very much. It might not make a very big difference. But if you want to save energy, that might, you know, it's a virtuous way to go. And they may be more expensive. I would really look at the reviews because there are lots of different kinds. Look for some that people like. And the LEDs don't have any mercury in the tubes. And I did hear a discussion that, you know, making LEDs is not pollution free either, but those are some advantages. I don't know if fluorescent bulbs are better, but if you already had fluorescent bulbs, I wouldn't necessarily want you to scrap them. Oh, this says we get even better results with LED. That's cool. I'm looking for a rationalization for getting LED, but I have to let mine grow, wear out first. So that's Stephen Beverly. You like your LED. I'd like to hear about that. And there you go. Okay, so I think that's it, right, John? I don't see any more. Okay, so sometimes when you grow things inside under light, something called damping off happens, and that's when on Tuesday they're all like this, and on Wednesday they're like that, and their little stems have rotted. So if it happens, get the ones that have fallen over, I mean, get the whole container containing those out. You can, if it didn't happen to their neighbors in other containers, that's okay. But get it out, dump the soil, get rid of the starts, wash them out, soak them in bleach, and then rinse it a whole lot. And you start over with sterile seed starting mix. And you know there are seed starting kits that have this plastic cover, looks like a takeout container cover. I know I'd never use those. I use a little, like a plastic bag over lettuce starts, because I don't put them in the soil. I just press them onto the surface of the soil and they can dry out easily. But if you did have a humidity cover on, as soon as any seed under their sprouts, I would pull it off. And with the humidity cover, if you're using it over the whole bunch of seeds, and one seed takes 5 weeks to sprout and one seed takes 2 days, I don't think it does very much good, because you're taking it off too early for some of the seeds. But you can partially cover things with like a loose open bread bag or something. You know those bread bags that they're plastic, but they have teeny tiny holes in them and they're really crinkly? They come sometimes inside of a paper sack. Those are really good. And if it's still a problem, if you have a little fan, you can blow. And here we have, Gabby says, use 50-50 vinegar water instead of, oh, can I sterilize? Okay, so I have heard that it doesn't work for that, but I haven't really looked up all the details on that. Even Ann Lovejoy says use the bleach, but I could definitely, you know, why not? I guess straight vinegar is too much vinegar, I guess, too expensive maybe. Yeah, so I don't know about 50-50 vinegar. Does anybody else? You can post if you do. Okay, you're gonna have to break it to them. They need to move out of your house. Whoa. So we're gonna do this when they have 3 or 4 leaves, true leaves, not the cotyledons, but real leaves. And the week before we're gonna put them outside, or start to put them outside, we're gonna reduce the water. Not, you know, don't starve them, but you're just gonna get rid of, you're just gonna not give them quite as much. You're gonna let the surface dry out a little bit. And you're gonna stop fertilizer if you're using it. That's for the week before. And then you're gonna set them outside for 1 or 2 hours. If it's blastingly sunny, you need a little bit of shade. So you can go over to your house, and you know those windows that have screens on them, but you never use them? You never open that window for some reason? You can take the screen off and you can prop it over your starts. Or you can come up with some other kind of screen. Or you can put it behind a plant that gently filters the light, but we need sun on those things because we have to get them used to it, or they'll get sunburn. They'll get sunburn if they get too much sun. And that's when you get a little area that looks like a paper bag. I don't have any sunburn on this, on the leaf. And it's okay. If the leaf gets a little bit sunburned, it's not a huge deal. And then every day you're going to give them a little bit more, like an hour more a day, or maybe 2 hours a day, and keep them up off the ground because slugs. And if they need to be a little bit warmer because it's been warm in your house and you're trying to get them used to a little bit cooler outside, then you can use that cloche again. Okay. Let's see. But the slugs are still going to try to get them. So I thought I would do some slug stuff. And maybe you can type in your slug ideas right now too. Big starts. I love the big starts because the slugs can't eat them as easily. Often they're also up higher, so the slugs doesn't occur to them. And of course, grow them up off the ground. So a crate, a table but I wouldn't invert pots, and I wouldn't put them on bricks, and I wouldn't put them on a pallet like on the ground, because that is a slug hotel under there. And then they'll just come up at night and munch away. Oh, beer traps. Does anybody hate beer traps? I'm looking at you. Oh, I see somebody nodding. Is it because you hate beer traps? I like beer traps. I have seen some YouTube videos that say the slugs just come and drink and then they leave. Mine don't. They are in there. They are some dead slugs, and a lot of them. So I'll just tell you how to do this. So you see, I smeared it. See, this is a yogurt tub, and you're going to need a lid because we want to keep the water out. We want to keep the rain out. And you're going to cut a window, and in fact, 2 windows, one on each side. Boop. And see how high that window is? It's kind of hard to see, huh? This is actually about less than 2 inches across and maybe 1.5 inches high. But see that it's pretty close to the rim? We want a lot of space down here. We're going to fill it up with, we're going to cut this with like a box knife very carefully, and then the scissors so you don't slip and cut your hand. And then we're going to fill it up with beer, or an alternative, which I'll show in a minute. Maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inches. I think 3/4 of a beer is what I put in one of them. And then I'm going to bury it. So I'm going to bury it, I'll make a little hole in the ground, and I'm going to bury it up to here just for a little bit of stability so it doesn't get knocked over quite as easy. But I don't want to bury it all the way up to the window because tiny bugs. We don't want to catch the tiny bugs. So we want this wall. So here's the soil, and here's where the slugs have to go. And they go up and they go down into the beer, and they have a lovely time, but they fail to drink responsibly, and it's not my fault. And those bugs are actually slug-eating beetles. So we do not want them in there. So they won't go up and over. So that's the deal with the slug trap. Let's see, does anybody have any slug trap info? Nope. I said last time I don't mulch little seedlings in the rainy season because I don't want leaf mulch slug bedrooms all around my lettuces, because I think it invites the slugs. And certainly when it gets warmer, then I do mulch. The next one says water in the morning. There's some ag research that compared watering in the morning rather than at night to slug pellets, the old style slug pellets, and they were equally effective. So, I mean, even if they're like 3/4 as effective, I think that's pretty good. I think watering in the morning, letting the surfaces dry out is a great way not to invite as many slugs. And then copper tape. I know copper tape is beloved of many people, beloved by many people, I guess. But Kew Gardens and a few other places have done some studies, like real controlled studies, and they say that it doesn't really work. But I'd be interested to know if you have a controlled study that's like 2 pots, same conditions, same plant, same pot, one with copper and one without. And you can plant cover to encourage predatory insects. So many insects in your garden are helping you. So don't panic when you see beetles and stuff, because a lot of times those eat slug eggs. A lot of them do. So I think next time is when we're going to do some beneficial insect stuff. But maybe you've noticed this. You go to pull something out, you go to pull out chickweed or something, and there are bugs just crawling away. So some of those are predatory bugs. And so I have a lot of alyssum in my garden because it's really good cover for those bugs. And there are other plants too that you can use. And then the last one is just about, when you're despairing and you can't get the slug, shall we call it waste, off of the lettuce, just put it in a pot of water for 10 minutes and it will rinse off. If you have, and another thing is slugs are not a personal statement that you are not competent enough to be an adult. It's like dandelions in the lawn. They're not out to, make you feel bad. They're just part of the ecosystem. So they are natural. I'm not saying we should love them, but they also aren't a sign that you're a failure. Slug damage, slug holes is not that bad for, you know, a big cabbage plant with 5 slug holes in it. It's not really going to be damaged to an extent. And if you don't want to do beer, do this. And Lovejoy's recipe. So that recipe is in the, it's in the resources page. And I haven't used it, but I don't know why, because why buy beer when you could do this? So I'm going to give it a go. Maybe you could test. Did I say, oh yeah, look, one of the questions here from, I don't see it now. I can't remember, I don't see who it was. But anyway, thank you for asking about Sluggo, the iron phosphate. First they said iron phosphate is harmless, and it was tested, and they tested, the testing bodies tested iron phosphate, and sure enough, it doesn't kill anything. But there's an inactive ingredient that makes the iron phosphate flood into the body all at once, so that it is toxic. And so it does that in slugs, but it also does in earthworms, and vets report that there have been pet poisonings. So I wouldn't say that it's great for soil life. Yeah. So that is my answer for Sluggo. Yes, there will be a replay. There is a there's a recording, and John will provide that. Oh, how many beer traps per square foot? Okay. So I don't have enough, but you know, if 1 every 3 feet would probably be good. They are good for about 2 to maybe 2 feet. They attract the slugs. So if you have lettuce, I do put them right in the middle, but a lot of people say don't put them in the middle of the lettuce, put them around, like slightly outside the lettuce bed to draw the slugs away. Oh, and another thing about slug traps is I think they're really great at this time of year because, and even earlier, because the slugs are waking up and they want to eat, but there's nothing out there. So when I put slug traps out, then they are very attracted. Let's see, a friend of mine swears by diatomaceous earth. That's good. I don't think it works unless it's dry. And I've seen some research that says they just go right over it. Also, I do use diatomaceous earth to keep them and earwigs and stuff out of the middle of my celeries. I just put a little bit inside the celery and the aphids and stuff. Diatomaceous earth is a mechanical, it breaks the exoskeleton of crunchy bodied bugs. I'm not sure what it does to slugs. I guess maybe it's irritating. But it does that to all insects, so I don't put it all over my garden. I'm really judicious about where I put it. So basically just inside the celery. Let's see. You're welcome. You're welcome, Nathan. Thank you. And how often? Oh, I was thinking about this. I knew you'd ask me this. I don't do it often enough. Let's say I would top it up. Could you top it up once a week? Is that too much? And supposedly as the slugs rot, the other slugs are interested and they go in there. But I probably should do it every week, but I don't. I probably do it every 2 weeks. Okay, back to alternatives. And we've got lots of questions, and I think that's every question. Okay. Oh, this is my little spiel that I just said. Okay. So that sounds a little scoldy, I guess, but I'm trying to just encourage you. They're just part of the deal. Okay. All right. Well, should we have a little break? John, a little break, 5 minutes. Should we have 5? So I'll see you back here in 5 minutes, okay? So 2 minutes after, that says, my clock says 2, it says it's 3 of, so I'll see you at 2 after. Okay, bye-bye. If you like me. Oh shoot, that was part of when we weren't recording. Sorry, John. Did anybody who wanted to see the slug traps see the slug traps? Because I was screen sharing and I shouldn't have been. So the point is that you have a barrier, a wall, part of the wall sticking up out of the soil. So the beetles walking around hit the wall and go around, and the slugs are more motivated and they go right up. It says, Steve and Beverly want to know, what do I do to maintain the slug trap? I take up the lid and I often pour the slugs at the base of some plant that I want to fertilize because that's a lot of nitrogen. And then that plant grows really well. And then I pour some more beer in and I slam the lid on it and put it back in the hole. Okay. That's how I do it. Is that it? And Mary Lou says, my experience, I know you can read these, but only the black and brown slugs are attracted to the beer. Yeah, I never get banana slugs. The banana slugs are indigenous and good for a garden. Yeah, don't they eat the little slugs sometimes? I mean, they say they'll eat part of your plants, but they'll also eat bugs, in slugs that you don't want around. That's cool. Okay. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, cleansing breath, everyone. We're going to talk about cloches and covers. So you might not do lights this year. You might never do lights, but now you know some stuff about them and about generally taking care of starts. Because even if you buy starts from the store, if they were in a greenhouse, they may not be hardened off. And that getting them used to moving out into the world is called hardening off. So if you know that they came from a greenhouse, you might want to do that process that I said, where you give them some filtered light for an hour and then you give them an hour a day more until they get used to the temperatures outside. So that works for purchase starts too. And another thing we can do with purchase starts and direct seeded things and all kinds of stuff that doesn't refer to lights is use cloches and tunnels. So a cloche, I said, for me, is anything you turn upside down to put over a plant to protect it. So they can do all these things. So sure, protect your early season seedlings. Even if you're direct seeding into a bed, you can make a little friendly microclimate in there and harden off your starts. But you can also make your heat loving plants that you bought from the store or grew yourself really happy. I left, last year with those 100-degree heat, I left the cloches on the tomatoes or on the peppers and the eggplants, and they loved it. Just huge production. I did take it off like from 12 to 2 in the afternoon, because why not expose them to that full sun? But I did have them on. It was really nice. So I'm going to show you how to make some of those. And you can also give plants a little more time to ripen in the fall. But I would say, when I say that, I would not, if you're thinking, I really wish my peppers got ripe, probably it's not the fall application of the cloche or the tunnel. It's really this one, putting it on and giving them a warm environment that's warmer than our usual 70 degrees. To help them move their ripening along the way they want to in the year, and all summer. You can keep rain off rot prone stuff. So I do a lot of that. A lot of things will stay in your winter garden for you that you can grow, but rot, they don't freeze necessarily most of the time, but they will rot in the rain. So that's handy, and you can prevent freezing of winter crops. So here are some cloches. There's a lot going on in this picture, but this is super early autumn. I don't remember why I put them on so early, but this was a few years ago. I guess I never do anything before I have to, so maybe it was going to freeze hard. But here are some covers. And these are old refrigerator drawers. When our fridge finally broke for good, I just took it apart and used all the pieces I could. So underneath here is lettuce, spinach, bok choy, and green onions for winter. And under here is escarole, which is the top picture on the right. It looks like lettuce, holds up better in the winter. The slugs will live like under it and around it and maybe even in it, but they don't completely turn it into mush the way they sometimes do with winter lettuce. And yeah, if it gets really cold, I'll pick these up and maybe throw, the towels we use to dry off the kayak, and I'll just throw the towels on under here if it's going to go into the 20s, and then put the cloches back on, the tunnels. These are called low tunnels, really. And I have food all winter. I mean, a lot of food all winter. So see this? Every lump is food. And here are the tunnels. This is another year actually, and there's just tons of food. This is an overturned, broken Rubbermaid bin. And there's a cloche back there. And these are broccolis and cauliflowers that are gonna make heads in March and April. And that all stayed alive. So these are powerful in all seasons. So usually we make them like this picture on the left. We drive rebar in the ground, or we put little clips in the ground or something, and then we take plastic plumbing pipe, black plastic plumbing pipe. Some people use PVC, that breaks down in the sun. I'm not sure what the black plastic plumbing pipe does in the sun, but you stretch them over and you make a little arch, and then you stretch plastic over the top, and then you tie the ends down like this over here. But just a sec. But I actually am a fan of a slightly different way to go. So these are the very common ones, and you can find out all over the place how to make these if you decide these are your favorites. I'm gonna propose this one. I'm gonna talk this one up because I just have, I don't see it as much, and I really like it. So this is remesh. It's called remesh. It's concrete reinforcing mesh. So that's what that's called. It's not a hog panel. Hog panels cost $50. These cost 10. If you call Builders First Source, when I called them, I said, how much is remesh? And they said, hog panels are, and they told me the price for that because they figured I wanted it for my garden. I wanted a hog panel, but the hog panel is really rigid. And this is also not fencing because fencing is too smushy. So you can make an arch, you bend it so that it stays this way. It's not like spring loaded. When you pick it up, it doesn't go flat. And then you put a cover over it. And usually people pin the ends down, but I got tired of pinning the ends down because I eat my food that's out in the garden all year, or I'm trying to check on my starts at this time of year that are out there. And it means in order to push the side up, I have to unpin the ends and then kind of wrestle this, and I'm cold and the water's caught in there and it's wet and it's kind of unpleasant. So it's not terrible, but I do it a slightly different way. So I'll show you what I do. This is a short version of the same tunnel. So I cut a piece of plastic so that it can go all the way down on each end, so longer than the tunnel. And then I flatten it on the end. You can't really see, but I'm just trying to make it as flat as possible. And that leaves me with a lot of extra on the side. So I pick up the side and I shove my hand under and I work it in there, kind of like a modified hospital corner on a bed, because you can see it right here on the right side. And then I make a loop in a little bit of rope or paracord or whatever, and I hook it on I hooked it on the other side, but I hooked it down there on the corner of the mesh. And then I brought it over the top with another loop, and that's a bungee just to keep it tight. So this is super mobile. It's super lightweight. I have a lot of these that are 9 feet long, I think, 8 feet long. And I can pick them up by grabbing the top. The plastic is just loose enough that I can grab the wire, and I just pick it up and like toss it off to the side to get it out of the way. But what happens if it's going to bluster and blow? You know those rocks that you find absolutely everywhere when you're digging? I find some that are as big as I can get that will still fit in one of those remesh squares. And I put it at the ground level in a corner remesh square so that it's sitting on the wire. So you probably can't see me, but it would be like in this square right here, sitting on the wire. And I put one at each corner. And I thought, well, probably I need more. It's probably this winter it's going to blow away, but it didn't. They don't blow away. So you can put more rocks if you feel, less confident. So you can also, this is quite high, so I'd like grow eggplants under this size, but you can also squash them a little flatter. So see, this is about 18 inches high and it's wider. So there's a 4-foot bed and my strawberries are under there, and there's deer netting on here. because in winter, I can't use my motion activated sprinkler that I was talking up last time, because it'll freeze, right? The water hose will freeze. So there's deer, this is not bird netting because that's a little hard to control, but the deer netting is easier to make sure that it stays on and doesn't get tangled up. And on the end, this end is open. I didn't have a problem with it, but you see there's a stick here. This is another whole one of them. You could put either a piece of rebar or a stick across the end and anchor it to the edges, the bottom edge of the tunnel, and then tie the netting to it. And then it would be like a definite stop for the squirrels. Here's another version. This is higher. These are favas that are in the front yard right now. So the rabbits and deer really like to eat them. So this is, again, deer netting over a tall tunnel, but follow my cursor. Favas grow up and get pretty tall, especially in my 6 hours of sun. And then they flop over and they're hard to find the beans and it's kind of a mess. So I'm going to hold them up. So I actually have another tunnel. So see my cursor here, and there's more remesh that goes like this. So it's a low one with no netting, and they've grown up through it. And then I have a high one to protect it. So it sounds like a lot of faff because I suppose it is when you first make them, but it's a lot easier than, you know, building a mini greenhouse or trying to work with bird netting that the plants grow through. And so I just make these once, and then I just reuse them for years and years. I have some that are 20 years old and they're fine. And I can cut them down and use them for different things. When I'm not using them for a hoop house, I can flatten it out and grow plants up it. So they're very adaptive and I quite like them. I would say this, if you have plastic over them and it's a sunny day, it can get sweaty in there. So you want to vent the ends by pulling the ends up or the sides up a little bit. And I just walk out and take them off for midday if it's really sunny. I'll just go out for my 11 o'clock stretch and take them off, and then I go up for my 4 o'clock stretch and put them back on. Not on all of them, but if I'm particularly concerned about something like getting too hot or too sweaty. And they make good trellises too. So remesh, this is rebar, which is concrete reinforcing rods. You can get them really long. And they've made a hoop. They've made a big tall tunnel. And then see these are tomatoes. So these trellises are made of remesh, not hog panel again. And you can trellis tomatoes. I'll talk about that in June. I think it's June. Anyway, you can trellis them. And then they have, you know, they're not as dense. The foliage isn't as dense because you prune out some of the foliage, and they have better airflow, and they're up off the ground, and they're not catching quite so much humidity. So that's something that some people like to do. I like to do it. Who has some questions or comments? Does anybody have anything you want to say? I got nothing. Okay.
Bill had a question in there.
Oh.
Excuse me, Peter had a question in there.
Oh, okay. John, can you tell me what it is? I don't see it.
Will you share these close sides with your constructions?
With my, oh, like with my instructions? I definitely, oh, the slides. Well, the slides are in the recording, but I suppose I could think about how to do that. I could just share the slide deck. Yeah, I mean, Joan, I could probably put that somewhere, right? I tell you what, if you want them, why don't you there's a feedback form at the end. If you could make a comment that you'd like to see one or all of the slides, then I think I could probably share them. I have to think about it. But yeah, of course, we want to be able to do that. Okay.
And you have put your email, and you put your email content in the
yeah, I
chat.
did put my email in the chat. Yeah, email me. Yeah, is that good? Okay. Thank you, Peter. Oh, with the bungee cords. Sure. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I can just send that to you. Sure. Okay. Okay. Well, here's where to get it. Now, all of this that's on the slide is in the resource page, and thanks to John, about to be in the chat as well. But you used to be able to get remesh that was 8 by 9 feet approximately, and that made the really long tunnels. But now you can get it 4 by 8 for $10 each at Builders First in Bainbridge Island and Kingston. This is what I know of. So Builders First used to be called ProBuild, and I'm sure you'll tell me what it used to be called before that, because I don't know, but everybody has a different name for it. It's the one behind Virginia Mason on Wintergreen that's across from Ace. Or you could get a 7'8" by 20-foot one for $50, which comes out to about the same, at Addison Pacific Supply in Bremerton. So I suppose if you wanted to make a super tall thing, I think it's actually 20 feet, only makes like a 6-foot high tunnel. But anyway, a really big tunnel like that trellis with the rebar that made a tunnel. You could do that. The question is, how do you get that home? But I think you could go to Addison Pacific Supply with an idea of how big you wanted your finished pieces and bring some bolt cutters. And if you don't have bolt cutters, I have small bolt cutters and you can borrow them. And cut it down and then put it on top of your truck. So let me email me if you want to borrow my bolt cutters because you want to cut something down, because this remesh does cut with the bolt cutters. I like a tunnel that is 8 feet long. I'm going to go back. I'm going to just click back in an awkward way. Yeah, okay. Actually, I'll use this one. This dimension right here is 8 feet. So we're getting a 4 by 8 foot panel. We're going to use 8 feet for this, and then it's only 4 feet long. So if you want an 8 foot long one that's like this, we're going to get 2 4 by 8 panels and wire them together. You know, just every once in a while, just put some really tight wire. And then you'll have your 8 foot long one. You could make an infinitely long one, but I think it's a bit awkward. And if you did it the other way, if you did it the 4 foot way, so that the 4 foot dimension were here, you get a really tiny tunnel. It's like 30 inches wide and 15 inches high, I think. So you could use that, but a lot of plants, you think they're not going to get that tall, but they get really tall. So that's the 8 foot dimension right there. And now I'm just going to click forward. If you don't like it, shield your eyes. Okay. So what about the plastic? Don't love using more plastic. So I have used a lot of reused mattress bags and pallet covers. And when there was an appliance store here, I went and asked the guy if I could look for plastic. And he was so excited because he really didn't like all the trash they were producing. So that's a reuse idea. I think those last 2 years, if you use reused plastic. If you're gonna buy plastic, you can buy plastic just like sheets in the hardware store, but they aren't UV resistant. And then we're making new plastic and it's not UV resistant, so it's gonna decay. So if you are gonna buy it because you just can't find anything, or a lot of times the mattress bag people, they just rip them down the middle. So I actually have to say, what if I brought you cookies? Would you, cut it cleanly and give me a big piece? You can, I'm actually going to stick with the reuse thing for a sec. You don't have to have one big piece that goes over it. You can use like 2 smaller pieces to cover it up and just put the paracord in more than one spot to hold the plastic up. If you're going to buy it, You can buy it at the hardware store and it probably lasts 2 years, I'm guessing. You can buy a UV resistant roll. It's at Johnny's Seeds. So let's go there. There it is, Tough Light Nursery Clear. They're out of it right now, but I called them. They're going to get it for sure at the end of March, so they say. And it's 100 feet long. So if you got that, it's $51 for 100 feet. If you got that, you could somehow let everybody here know, or like we could probably organize it somehow. If you wanted to share with 6 other people, then we'd get 6 cloches out of that, right? I think 6 8-foot tunnels, because everybody could get like a 15-foot piece. And then they say for sure this lasts 4 years. I think it's going to last longer. I got some because I found it at a garage sale. So I felt like that was a score. So that's how I learned about this. So am I conflicted about promoting the plastic? Yes. But those are some options. And then, yeah. So, and I use it absolutely every season. I'm always using them. And I really like the metal I really like the metal because it lasts an incredibly long time. And when it decays, it just becomes iron in the soil. So what are we looking at? Do you need to use greenhouse plastic? Regular visqueen. Oh, it's not UV blocking. It's UV resistant. So the plastic doesn't break down in the sun as easily. You know, it'll particulate in the sun eventually. It gets weaker and stuff. So that's why the UV resistant roll is available. But certainly you could use regular plastic. You could just buy new regular plastic. And I was saying I thought it lasted a couple of years. In my experience, I think it usually does last a couple of years. But maybe if you're careful, you can get it to last longer. Okay.
Carol,
So
I use regular 6 mil plastic that's just left over from other projects to do some of my composting. And 2 years, it's not full sun all the time, but 2 years is the absolute extent that it has lasted me. Then it starts breaking up into tiny little pieces that I have to chase all over my yard.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's great to reuse, but you're not going to get as much life out of it, right? To reuse from people's trash is good. Well, that is everything about cloches. And I'm going to show you just remind you of what the classes are projected to be about this year. So next year, predators and pollinators and spring crops. I have a specific question on the feedback form about whether you want me to talk more about how to put seeds in the ground and make the carrots come up, or how to make the lettuce sprout evenly, or something like that. So you can tell me if you would like that, and I will adjust things according to what you want. Because I don't know if you're at the level of wanting to do things that you're going to grow in wintertime, and that's a little more challenging, or you just want to make the carrots come out of the ground. So what you want. So that is what you can do. Oh, John, the feedback survey form is in red at the bottom of the text part of the resource page. Okay. Final questions. Let's check. Oh, okay. Fran wants to know more about what needs to be started from seeds and what's okay to buy starts. I think tons of things are okay to buy from starts. Let's see. I don't remember where I was in this. Yeah, I buy some starts. I mean, I think it's fine to buy everything from starts, except for these guys right here. I don't think you'll find them as starts. They do sometimes have garlic in pots, but garlic is so easy to just stick in the ground that I don't think we usually need to do garlic in pots. But these are the ones that we do directly in the ground because they have a diving root. And we can't have them start to circle inside of a pot or get malformed in the pot, in the little tiny pot, because you end up with carrots that are split and things like that. So, you know, you meet people who every once in a while who manage to start a parsnip in a tube out of a, this one woman did it in a tube out of a paper towel roll, and she started all of her parsnips in these super long tubes. Let's see. So you can buy all sorts of things in as starts. I think you could buy everything here as starts. You can get peas as starts and beans and all of these things as starts. And it's just, if you were saying, well, do I need to make myself create these as starts? They're pretty easy to sow directly, so I probably wouldn't do that. But if you want to go buy them, then I think so. Can anybody catch me on that and say, nope, you need to just never do these or always do these? I don't see anybody doing that. How was that, friend? Does that give you the answer that you want?
Yes, thank you. That's very clear.
Okay, cool. I think I have a modified version of this actual page in the resource page, which is good.
I had another question that you skipped.
Oh, okay. What was, oh, can you say it?
Yes. So for heat-loving plants,
Mhm.
you know, like tomato, is it good to put some bricks at the base to heat up during the day and stay warm longer in the night?
Oops. If you do that, you are preventing the soil from heating. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. You mean the brick is heating, but the soil is not.
Yeah, so sometimes people will put bricks on plants, around plants that don't like heat, like supposedly clematis.
Oh, huh.
And then I've seen an experiment where they took 50-gallon barrels and they put them all over in a greenhouse because they thought that would heat the greenhouse, right? That would at least maintain the temperatures. But they found that the barrels were shading the ground and it cooled the soil temps.
Right.
So I think I'd rather have the tomatoes have happy roots.
Okay, thank
Maybe
you.
if we, and does anybody else have an opinion about that? But you could use a cloche, but you know, for a while anyway, and then get them used to not having that. Do you know some people make super tall high tunnels? I may try this ridiculous thing this year. I may suspend one of my hoops really high over my tomato plants. Even Lovejoy has written about making, you know, tomato houses, because I'm at the point where I can do ridiculous things.
I just listened to a podcast by Seattle Urban Farm, and they talked about high hoop houses versus low sort of stuff. It's very interesting. A lot of good information. I'll put the link into the chat.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right. So those are even, a high hoop is like almost like a greenhouse. It's like can be 20 feet wide. So it's like a massive version of a little low hoop. And a tomato house is a narrow thing. It's just like 4 feet wide and maybe 8 feet tall. What was I going to do? Do you want to see the resource page or are we over that? Anybody opinion? It's going to make you queasy because I'm going to scroll through. So if you haven't seen this, it's got everything from the last class. Here's the planting calendar. I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but it's got all kinds of books and all the things we talked about today, but then go way down and it has locally adapted seed sources, seeds from ancestral cultures, and everything I know about local pea patches. So that's actually on 2 pages. So there you go. Crop rotation, you're right. I have not talked about crop rotation. I was going to do that in the pests and disease one. It depends. Tomatoes, I think, are at least 3 years. Some people rotate. Some people rotate 7 for some crops. So potato and tomato are a minimum of 3 years. And there are these things called rotation groups. So if you grow things in the potato family, which is all these things, and say you're growing them in this bed, you should grow them in that bed the following year, that bed the next year, and then rotate them around. I'll say that rotation does not usually work perfectly, but we give it a try. We try hard, right? Can I put my handwritten list of veggies by season? Yes, but I'm not sure what that is. Let me find it. Was it one that I actually talked about, or is it one that I was? Let me see what I have. These are like, are you talking about this thing? Oh wait, I'm not sharing, never mind. Showing the right thing. You're not talking about this, right? Oops, I got a NYES. Was that yes? Do it again, Jerry. Yes. Oh, this. Okay. This is what we eat in the winter. This was, so I'm going to show this later, but this is fresh in the garden, and some of it is under those hoop houses. And then we have things I cellar in the garage and dry and ferment and freeze and all that stuff. So did you have a, sorry, I'm not used to this trackpad. Did you have a particular question about this, Jerry? That's not very big, is it? Should I try to zoom? I don't think I can. It won't let me go in any bigger. Anyway, that was for a tour that I did, but I was just, these are not actually the slides that were for this presentation, so they're like extras. But anyway, you can have these things, if you have the space to start them in the fall, then you can have these fresh in your garden, and you can save a lot of things and that kind of thing. Okay, is that okay, Jerry? You got it? Okay. Oh, that's sweet, thank you. Okay, so in the chat has been placed the link for the feedback form, right, John?
No.
Oh, we didn't see that? Yeah, it's the one that says forms. John, to everyone. John, could you place that feedback form one more time, please?
Yep, it should be at the bottom of chat right now. If you scroll all the way down, it should be there.
Thank you, John. Thanks. Does anybody have anything that you'd like to say? Any ideal or contradiction? Like, I never do this, Carol. I think that was baloney. Come on, it's a club. It's called Veg Club.
I can tell you that copper has never worked for us. We did 2 raised beds in our garden 2 years in a row. One time we tried copper tape, completely covered the edges of the raised bed. And then that didn't work. And we had a bed that was right beside it that didn't have it. And then the next year we put copper pipe on around there, and that didn't work either. And so we were thinking that maybe they were already in the soil.
Oh, yeah, they were. They were in the soil.
So we trapped some in there probably.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'd be interesting to have some, I don't know, a little local research. Yeah. But there are people who love it. Oh, yes.
The survey looks like it's one from last time.
I gave the wrong one. Okay, I'll do it.
Isn't that?
I'm sorry, John.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm about to put it in the chat, I think. Okay, don't do those surveys. I guess I made a mistake. Okay, I'm going to call it the March survey, and it's about to be put in the right place. Okay, nope, I've done it wrong. Thank you for your patience. That's the one. Okay, Meridel, tell me if that's the right one.
This should be the right one.
It looks like it. Does
Uh-huh.
it look good?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing the survey. I really appreciate it, especially the part where you say, this will be helpful, this will not. Here's what else I'd like to know for the future so that I can make it right. Because I kind of have to take a guess as to who I'm talking to, you know, like what your needs are.
So do you answer specifically in terms of yourself? Because, you know, like a lot of your planting at home advice is very useful, but I'm not going to use it because I don't plant under lights.
Right, right.
So
Well,
which do I
I do
answer?
want to, yeah, well, that's the thing is I don't know who's here and I suspect I have, I mean, from last time I had people who are very experienced, but they're just really curious and they want to know more. So they want the lights. And then there are people, someone said, I just got moved in, new garden, never touched dirt before. You know, so I want to know who I am talking to. And I guess I can't apply it to the next time, but at least, you know, I try to look for trends. So I would like to know for you in particular, what's useful, if that's okay. And if you have a better way to do a survey, because you're better at it, let me know, because I want the good info. Well, thank you so much for coming and for sticking
Thank
with it and all that. That's really cool. And I hope that I see you next time.
Thank
And
you.
eventually, months from now, in person. Sorry.
Okay, thanks a bunch. It was very nice.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks,
The recording for
everybody.
this, the recording for this will be on Bainbridge Prepare's YouTube channel, probably about a week from now. It's just how we do the handoff, and then they watch it and make sure that it came across correctly, and then it gets uploaded at that point. So give it about a week and it'll be up there. If you want to email me directly, I can send you, I'll put it up on my YouTube as well, but I'll have to send you the link for that. And I'm going to put my email in the chat right now.
And thanks to John so much. And thanks to Bainbridge Preparers who sponsored this. And we will next time talk about preparedness a little bit, like just for a few minutes of why are we doing this for preparedness? So, because they're the ones who funk it up. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Anything else? We got anything else? Okay, bye, everybody.
Let's see.